when we're emotional in our decision making, we might go, wow, I'm really excited, I want to do something, but we don't think about what could go wrong. And so a lot of people, and this is my criticism of the positive thinking movement, is that when people are over positive and are over excited or elated, they can actually do just as much dumb shit as what someone who's depressed can do. And anyone who's felt depressed before knows that you'll hold yourself back and hinder yourself from opportunities that are available. Someone who's elated and excited may take on opportunities that are stupid without thinking through them because they're not actually thinking effectively. And when that happens, we tend to have polarities in our brain.
That was an excerpt from my interview with the Mojo Master. And if you guys enjoyed it, you're going to love part 2 of my interview with him. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Six Sexy. If you are new to the channel, hi, my name is Sophia Anna. I post once a week about all things invisible illness, disability, health, and relationships. This week on The Six Sexy, I'm super excited to show you part 2 of our interview with Michael Johnson, aka the Mojo Master. If you like more content like this, please give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, and enjoy this week's episode.
How have you in your personal life, because obviously you do speak a lot about how a lot of the values that you personally have, they kind of fluctuate. So like I've heard you say before, maybe one year you'll spend focusing predominantly on your career, and the next year you'll focus on your family. And so it kind of fluctuates, as does your life, because you realize that, life is moving, it's ever evolving. How have you continued with your value system, like during mental adversity, during hardship?
Yeah, it's a great question. If I can just explain what values are first, just because some listeners may not understand, because I think the majority of what's taught about values is actually incorrect. So the study of value system is a field of study called axiology. And it's based on 2 core fields of two fields. One of them is economics. And what economics is trying to figure out is, where are you the most valuable person? Okay. And that might be financially, but it's talking about value. So for me in my life, my number one value is teaching and learning. So I make the most amount of money from teaching and learning. The more I learn and the more I teach, the more money I make. And that's been since I got clear on that. Now, if you take someone whose highest value is sport, they're obviously their greatest earning potential is going to be in sport. My dad is a builder. Now, he loves doing things with his hands, so he builds custom cars as well as a hobby. Him as a builder and someone who likes working with his hands, he's a genius at building things. But you give him book work to do and he's just useless at it because that's not his thing. Some people are amazing at technology and computers, but the way that our society perceives value system is that they're things like kindness and honor and respect and happiness, which they're not values. Okay, they in fact they mean nothing. What they are is, the majority of the time, they're emotional states that we feel, and they come and go, they fluctuate throughout the day. So I can be happy one second, unhappy the next. So to think that that's a value, it might be valuable within my life, but it doesn't make that a core value of mine as a person. The second field that encompasses value systems is metaphysics, and it's asking, where do I feel the most valuable in my life? So one is, where am I actually valuable? And the other one is, where do I feel the most valuable? And those 2 things related together become your values. Now, values are physical, tangible things. So they're not fluffy. They're something that you can touch, you can feel, and you can see. So you can experience it within your own life. So some of the common ones that we get are things like family, friends, connections, travel, learning, teaching, their values, creativity, artistic skills, management, process, systems, systemization. They're common values, okay, for a person. That's a generalization, but they're unique to us. And then the way that we experience them is unique to us. Okay, so the way that I learn and what I learn about is slightly different to other people. Okay, and when you realize that, that becomes your place in the market sector, and that makes you feel valuable. I know that there are very few people on the planet that have ever studied high performance to the level that I have. But there are people out there who are smarter at neuroscience than what I am. And by knowing that, I go, well, that's cool, because I know my place and I can learn from those people, but at the same time, they can't compete with me, and I will probably never compete with them. If I do, I become unfulfilled, and that makes me feel shitty, and that's not what I want. So from what I've seen is that your brain is actually hardwired to live your values, because it's a place where you perceive you're most valuable and have the greatest opportunity to evolve as a person. So then from there, what I've been able to find out is that when we live outside of our values, we get a lot of emotional feedback. And that's what throws us out of balance, because the brain is structured in evolutionary structures. So you've got parts of the brain, I guess you could say, like the brain stem and the cerebellum, which are, you may have heard of it being called the reptile brain. They're more just worried about survival and safety. That's it. Now, then we've got the limbic system, which is our emotional system, and that's the monkey brain. So under stress, when we're afraid, we can drop back into the crocodile brain, where we just react to things to fight for survival, or we can become emotional, because that's our monkey brain, and we want to try and fit into the tribe and make sure that we're safe as primitive animals. But there's a more evolved brain structure called the neocortex, or the executive center, or the frontal lobe, or the prefrontal cortex. That part of the brain that comes online more when we live our values, and we can start to plan more. We become more creative. We become more objective in our thinking, so we can sort of see, if I do this, here's the benefits, but there's also going to be these problems, and we can mitigate risk. When we're emotional in our decision making, we might go, wow, I'm really excited, I want to do something, but we don't think about what could go wrong. And so a lot of people, and this is my criticism of the positive thinking movement, is that when people are over positive and are overexcited or elated, they can actually do just as much dumb shit as what someone who is depressed can do. And, anyone who's felt depressed before knows that you hold yourself back and hinder yourself from opportunities that are available. Someone who's elated and excited may take on opportunities that are stupid without thinking through them, because they're not actually thinking effectively. And when that happens, we tend to have polarities in our brain. And so that can become, that can heavily influence our ability to feel successful or to achieve success, and also feel fulfilled in the pursuit of what we perceive as successful.
And so to your point of positivity, Michael, because that's something I actually wanted to ask you. Obviously, as a performance coach, you do a lot of learning into, different concepts and what drives people. And obviously, what drives people is also dependent on the society, I believe. So, you can heavily be influenced by those around you. And I've noticed a lot, there's a big movement towards what I would call toxic positivity. So the idea that you can't actually experience any spectrum of emotion that's not happy or, positive at all times. And to your point of saying that, people who are in that constant elation or, hyperactivity can't make reasonable decisions, or decisions that will impact their lives in meaningful ways long term. What's your view on toxic positivity? What's your view on the idea that as human beings we can only feel one way, or that feeling depressed or feeling unhappy or unfulfilled is negative, or is painted in a negative way?
Yeah, it's another great question. Like they're really good questions. I think everything in life, if you have a look at it, is toxic. It just depends on the amount, right? So water is toxic in extremes. Oxygen can be toxic in extremes as well, but it can also, not enough water and not enough oxygen can be toxic in extremes. So, looking at it from an objective standpoint, as objective as I can, there's a time and a place for everything. Like, from what I've been able to find, and I had this really good debate with a positive thinking guru. And he said, but Michael, if you have a look at people like Elon Musk, he's an extremely positive guy, he's optimistic. And I said, he thinks the world's going to end. So Elon Musk thinks the world's going to end, so we need to put people on Mars. Now, is he optimistic? Yes. He's optimistic that we can get to Mars. That's what makes him a great entrepreneur. Okay. But at the same time, he's driven by trying to get away from pain and solve a problem. Now, that's meaningful to him, so that becomes part of his mission. And also, he lives his values. He is, from a young age, if you watch his story or read his book, which wasn't written by him, but there's enough stuff out there. There's actually a documentary on Amazon Prime, I think, about him that's just been available, I think, for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
In Australia, which is fantastic. But he's from a young age, he's loved business and he's loved technology, and he's also loved like space and space travel and space exploration, and he was into quite a lot of like sci-fi stuff. So if you have a look at his life reflects those three values pretty consistently. And from a young age, he sold his first business from a very young age. I think it was like in his early teens. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it got him started to the next one. I think he sold his first business for like his second business for like $300,000 at like 17 or something, or 16. Now that's a lot of money. So, you know, or a lot of money for a person of that age. So he's always had those patterns of behavior. Now, what I would say is the most successful people that I've worked with are optimistic about the future, and they're optimistic that they can solve the problems of today. Now, in life, we solve today's problems and we create another problem tomorrow. So a lot of people who are a bit delusional think, well, if we just solve this one problem in the world, like we know now that there's a pollution problem in the world. But if we solve that problem, we're going to create another problem that's bigger. And that's been part of evolution since the dawn of time. And it's just part of solving a problem. I'm a business owner, and every day I just deal with problems, and you solve one, and they just keep moving forward and just keep solving another problem. So he's optimistic that he can solve a problem. He's optimistic enough that he can do it as well. So there's the optimism that his business can do it, and that he can do it, and that he believes it's possible. At the same time, though, he still knows that there are lots of problems, and he's very aware of those problems. He's always mitigating risk, which is intelligent as a business person. And also he sees problems in the world today, the pollution problem, the fact that we're using things like coal. So he wants to create solar panels and solar cars to deal with that. He also wants to get people off of the earth. So I think great thinkers are balanced in their positivity, or their positivity and their negativity, and their optimism and their pessimism. People who are a bit delusional, and depending on how charged they are, like how much they want to be positive or how much they want to be negative, the more you go in one direction, the more out of balance you're going to be, and the more life's going to kick you in the teeth. So I've seen super positive people that essentially their whole life has turned to shit, and they still think, oh, everything's great, life's great, oh, I'm so fantastic, and you're like, you're full of shit. Just tell me the truth. And they're unbelievable. Yeah. Because no one can be that positive all the time.
Yeah.
But people who think that the world's going to fall apart and that everything's horrible and that the world's a shit place, they're just as toxic to be around. So there's a balance point. You know, there's a balance between both. And on a daily basis, if we can use our emotions to guide us back into some sort of a flow towards our mission, our purpose, and our values, life becomes really fulfilling, and we become very much self-aware. There are lots of people out there who say that they're very spiritual and very positive, and they're just really unaware people. You know, and I get people who argue with me on social media consistently about this, and they go, oh, you wouldn't understand because I'm enlightened. I've read more books about philosophy and metaphysics than probably 99% of those people, and I can heavily debate with them that the fact that they're even saying that I'm less evolved than them, or I wouldn't understand because I'm not as enlightened, already shows their lack of intelligence, because someone who is enlightened wouldn't judge me for that. So there's just there's not just a toxic positivity movement. There's also a toxic negativity movement as well, and a lot of people who run around with labels, who, you know, get over supported, who think the world's going to fall apart and everything's always a problem. Then you've also got the toxic spirituality movement. You've also got the toxic scientific movement that believes that everything has to be solved with science, and if we can't prove it, then it doesn't exist, which even defies science itself. So I think at extremes, there is always toxicity, if that makes sense.
In your own personal life, how have you balanced, I mean, because obviously you must have a lot of people that pigeonhole you as well as only being a specific, you know, person, being a performance coach or a mindset coach. How in your own life have you gone through life with the idea of that balance? Because being self-aware is not something that we're born with. It's something that I believe we harness. And it can be hard to do that in times where, you know, you question who you are as a person. So yeah, how in your personal life do you go through life with that self-awareness?
Again, I think it's just an ebb and a flow. Like, there are times where I'm aware, and there are times where I lack awareness. Something that I try to teach in my events is that I don't want anyone on the planet to perceive that I've got my shit figured out. And anyone who tries to promote that, I'm already telling you that they're lying and that they're full of shit and they're delusional. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that, because they want to go to a motivational event to hear a motivation person tell them how they're always motivated. Or they want to go to a positivity event because they're very negative on the inside and they want to know, how do I get positive all the time? or they want to go to a wealth creation event where they can be financially free. But in all honesty, as I mentioned, I've worked with some of the world's best leaders. Like, I've spoken with Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Wow.
he's head researcher. I
love
spoke
his
with him in
work.
Mexico, actually. Pardon?
I love his work.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. Actually, I drank tequila with him in Mexico. He's a fun guy. I had dinner with him. I was speaking at the same event he was speaking at. Dr. John Demartini is a very close friend of mine and a colleague, and I'm very close with him. I speak to him and his daughters almost weekly. Well, not him every week, but I speak to him quite regularly. But his daughters are very close friends of mine. I get insider knowledge all the time around what's working, what's not working, and how people operate. And there is so many people in the personal development space, or even the spirituality space, who lie to people, who just blatantly fucking lie. And it's unfortunate, because people come to my events and they go, well, Michael, you're not spiritually aware because you don't hang crystals and shit around your neck, and you're not burning incense and sitting on a beach meditating. Like, you don't understand because you're not that smart. And I'm like, what do you have no understanding. The people that you're learning off are lying to you, and they're blatantly lying. It's easy to say that, we should be peaceful all the time when you have no real ambition. Like, if I were to sit on my couch all day watching TV, I could be pretty peaceful. But trying to grow a business and having staff and having people criticize you and having people on Facebook tell you that you're an asshole or a piece of shit, that's challenging. Now, is that a challenge that I want to take on, or is it like, how do I want to live? The key is, can I take on bigger challenges and learn what I need to learn and be peaceful at that level? Because that's part of the test, right? Every level that you're at, you get a test. If I can go through the level of life that I'm living at now and have this chaos and stuff inside of me that I'm learning from, to a point where I can be peaceful at that level, then I move to the next level, and then I'm going to get a test to see if I've really gone back to that level. Now, the things that used to stress me and frustrate me don't even frustrate me anymore, but there are things that frustrate me now because it's the level that I'm at. So I haven't got rid of my frustration. It's just that the things that frustrate me now are a lot bigger, and I'm handling way bigger things than what I used to. For me, I use the analogy of the gym. Like, I want to go to the gym and lift heavier weights. I don't want to lift lighter weights. If I keep lifting lighter because it's easier, I get weaker. Okay, now I can convince myself that I'm going to the gym, but I'm not getting stronger. I'm getting weaker by taking the easy option every day at the gym. So I want to go and lift heavier weights. Now, does the psychology of the weights ever get lighter? No, the numbers get lighter. So I can lift heavier now, say my squat, than what I've ever lifted before. But at the same time, does it suck just as much as when I was like 18 and 19 and going to the gym and lifting lighter weights? Yes, the suck factor is still the same. Okay, it's just the weight has gotten a lot bigger. And I think if you think about life like that, it makes life a lot easier, because you go, you know what? I am stressed today, but I'm stressed because look at what I'm lifting. Like, I should be stressed. But if that was me 10 years ago, I could have never taken on that stress. I meet so many people who want to make $1 million, and they come to me and they go, Michael, I want to be a millionaire. And I go, okay, cool. What do you think that's going to do for your life? And they go, well, life will be easier. And I go, really? That's what you think? That's the bullshit that you're being sold. Do you know the likelihood of you getting sued once you make $1 million rises significantly? Do you know all the legal implications? Do you know the tax implications? Do you know all the bullshit that you have to do to protect that money? Making the money is the easy part. It's all the rest of the shit that you got to do that's the hard part. If I had a six-pack, life would be better. No, wouldn't you get judged just as much, if not more, if you had a six-pack? And you're trying to avoid judgment, thinking that you get judged less if you have a better body. Now, that's not true. You obviously look after yourself. I'm sure you get judged about the way that you look consistently by people on social media, and people have comments. So looking better doesn't necessarily mean that life gets any easier. It's just a different challenge.
And it comes back to your point of evolution, and how with the evolution of a human being, your challenges and your problems evolve, and you have to evolve with them. Otherwise, you're constantly going to be stuck in an area where the challenges around you are getting more and more severe, but you don't have the mental aptitude to be able to deal with those challenges in that time.
100%. And I think part of the mental health issue that we have in our society at the moment, because it's sort of, I'm not sure, and I mentioned this on social media a couple of weeks ago, and it's something to think about. I'm not sure if the positive thinking movement is a direct reflection of because it's obviously increasing. Like positive thinking has become a big thing in the last like 10 or so years. But if you also have a look, there's been a massive increase in the rates of depression, anxiety, eating disorders, drug addiction. All of those things are increasing as well. So I'm not sure whether the positive thinking movement is a counterbalancer to the addiction, everything, and the depression and all that stuff that's already there, or whether the positive thinking movement is actually part of the cause of this. I'm not sure.
I think it definitely might be, because I think it comes back to the idea of, having cognitive dissonance. And so if we're not actively working through the pain and the anger in a certain situation, and we're kind of blanketing it with positivity or what we perceive to be positivity, then those feelings just continue to fester underneath this facade of what we think we should be or how we should be carrying on. And so I think that's when, like you said, there's 1 in 2 Australians with depression, with, like, I myself work in the health field, and the amount of people that I see on antidepressants is just, it's really sad, and it's really alarming. And you're looking at teenagers in 18, 19 to elderly people in their 70s and their 80s. And I think this is coming from a culture that, especially like in my grandparents' era, you didn't talk about your problems. And I think we are kind of going backwards in our inability to express how we feel, for fear of what society will think of us. So yeah, definitely I 100% believe that people just are not acknowledging their emotions in the moment, and then they are manifesting in really ugly ways later in life.
100% agree. And I also think that there's another part that we sort of don't look at, which is in our grandparents' era. Like, I remember talking to my grandmother before she passed away a couple of years ago. And I said, look, when you were younger, what was your goal in life? Like, what did you really want? And she said, Michael, I was one of 18 kids. And she said, we lived in a 3-bedroom house with 18 kids. And she said, so for me, all I ever wanted was a family where we could have a roof over our heads. There was enough space for my kids to play, and that we'd paid off our house. She said, that's all I ever wanted, was to pay off our house and to have a family, and to make sure that the family was okay and that they had enough space to play. That was it. That was her mission in life. Now, she'd achieved that. So once she'd achieved that and her kids moved out of home, her life sort of went downhill, and she sort of became a bit not distant, but disassociated, where she just didn't really have any goals or any more ambition in life. But that was part of it. On my mum's side of the family, my grandpa, his dad passed away when he was 13, and he became man of the house, and his mum never worked.
Wow.
So he went out and got his first job. He quit school, went out and got his first job. And all he ever wanted was his kids to go to university so that they could get a good education, because he felt like he could never have that education. He also wanted to create enough financial stability, because for him, having a dad who passed away young and having no financial stability put all that pressure on his kids, on himself. So he never wanted that. So he created financial independence at a young age. Now, that was important to him. When we have a look at our generation, we've got things like Instagram, where if I'm a male and if I don't have a 6-pack and a ripped abs, and I don't have an awesome tan, and I don't have a wicked haircut, and if I've got to get rid of my wrinkles now because I'm 37, if I don't have that, then maybe I'm not good enough. But then at the same time, I'm married. If we don't have an amazing relationship that always looks perfect on Instagram, then maybe our relationship's broken. And if I have negative thoughts, maybe I'm broken. And there's this whole society now that has this we're so lucky in this country and in the westernized world, where we don't really have a lot of problems. In fact, we have bare minimal problems. Now, if you ask people in the westernized world, they will tell you they have shitloads of problems. But when you travel around the world, like I go to South Africa every now and again to study, so every couple of years, when you go over there, they have 33% unemployment. That means that your number one priority in life is survival. Like if you get clean drinking water, you live in a shanty pad with however many family that you have there, which is essentially a tent. You might sleep with a machine gun or a gun under your bed, because it's highly likely that someone's going to come in and steal all your shit in the middle of the night. And then during the day, you might have to walk for 2 to 3 kilometers to get on a bus to go to work to make just enough money to buy food, right? Now, that's if you have a job. If you don't have a job, you're essentially standing at the road trying to sell whatever you can sell to make some form of money to feed yourself. That's very common around the world. Now most Australians never see that. Okay, we travel to America or we go to Bali and we act like fucking kings or queens, but we don't see what's happening around the rest of the world. The average global income is normally around $5 a day if you take out the top 10% of income earners. So we're talking about all the billionaires, all the multimillionaires, and so on. So the average Australian, you can sit on your ass in this country and do nothing for your whole life and make more than the average income. Okay, and then we perceive we're stressed and we've got all these fucking problems. But Australians don't have these problems. What we do is we create our own problems. Because in life, if you don't have problems to solve, you create problems because problems help with growth. So in life, stress creates growth. In nature, stress creates growth. And in the universe, pressure creates change. So we have to have pressure and we have to have stress in order to grow and evolve. Now, if we don't have enough pressure and stress that we're creating on ourselves to grow, we will make insignificant things significant and blow them out of proportion in order to force ourselves to grow. Now, a lot of people in our society, like you essentially can be an 18-year-old girl who's just got her first job, and you can go out and buy a $3,000 or $4,000 Louis Vuitton handbag on a credit card. That's cool. Now, some girls at 18 years of age feel like a piece of shit and they're worthless because they don't have a Louis Vuitton handbag that they bought on credit because some other young girls got that. Now, if you go to South Africa, they're not even thinking about that stuff. They're thinking like, how do I stay in school and not get pregnant? Because if I do that, I'm probably going to stay where my family have stayed for their whole life. That's like, and how do I eat today? Am I going to have a roof to go home to tonight? How do I survive? So we've got different problems in the westernized world. I think our biggest problem at the moment is that we have so much choice, it becomes really stressful. And the analogy that I use at my events on this is that if you go into a restaurant and you get given 3 options for lunch or 4 options, it's easy to choose. But if you go and get the old Chinese menu at a Chinese restaurant where they've got like 40 pages and you start looking through and you go, oh, I'd love the honey chicken. Oh, I'd love the rice. After a while, you start getting so stressed out and frustrated because you don't know what to do. Most Australians and people in the westernized world are living life like that. What should I do? I have so much choice. I don't know what to do. And I don't know what to work on. And I don't know what to focus on. And now I'm so stressed out. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm going to distract myself. And so they distract themselves to take the pressure away. But by doing that, they're not growing. And when they don't grow, then pain becomes another motivator. Then they get driven for a while where they're under pain and they make irrational decisions. And then after a while, again, they have too many choices. And then it tends to be this going back and forward of like irrational decision-making and trying to remove pressure by drugs or by alcohol or by getting caught up in drama or overwatching TV or, binge eating or, buying shit that people can't afford. This is what I see in Australia. And also, I personally believe that part of our mental health issue, from studying a lot of human behavior and a lot of neuroscience and a lot of different fields of science, what I know is that normally when someone feels really down, now we can call that depression, but they essentially feel down, in the majority of cases, if not all cases, in the majority of cases I've ever worked with, it's normally that their expectations about life don't match the fantasy or the delusion that they've created about how life should be based on not only their own expectations, but the expectations that other people have pushed on them. And I also see that this is getting worse with social media because when you look at social media and you see, I should be living in a multi-million-dollar house, but at the same time, I shouldn't have to work because I should be able to sit on a laptop and only work 2 hours to have a multi-million-dollar house. And I also want a Ferrari, but I also want to have the most amazing body. When you just look at that in itself, in order to have a great body, you've got to put in hours of work every day. Okay, that's the truth. If you want to have a super successful business, you have to put in hundreds of hours of work. Some weeks it may be 100 hours, some weeks it's 80 hours, but it ain't a standard 9 to 5. Like we're talking, yesterday I was up from 4 a.m. until, I think I worked until 7:30 last night.
Wow.
Okay, so that's a standard day. And by the way, I still, at 4 a.m., I got up, did a little bit of work, and then went out and trained. Because I'm fortunate enough to have a gym in our house. So I went and trained, but then it was straight back into work again. So, and by the way, this has taken like 20 years to get a gym in my house. Like that's not just something that I woke up and was there. That's 20 years of hard work. So, when you look at that objectively in time wise, how are you going to have a 6-pack and a wicked body, a multi-million-dollar business, have amazing skin and have a beauty routine, plus look after your kids amazingly and be an amazing parent, and then have amazing friends, plus, go out on supercar drive days and go and hang out with rich people. You can't, it's not possible. So what it means is you've got to know what you're setting your life up for at certain points in your life. I'm starting to enjoy the fruits of the last 15 years only now, okay, at 37 years of age. So if someone asked me at 30, I didn't even celebrate my 30th birthday because I was working. And I remember my family saying, you need to go on a holiday. And my parents bought me a ticket to Bali because they said, you need to go away and learn how to celebrate your birthdays. Because before that, I just didn't celebrate. I was like, I got too much shit to do. I'm not where I want to be. I've got nothing to celebrate. So I'm working. So I think a lot of people see the outcome, but they don't see the effort. And until you really understand the effort, you'll never get the outcome. So I personally believe with my events, I'm trying to set people up to say, look, if you get clear on your values, you know what's important to you. If you focus on them, not only will life be fulfilling, but you'll also be successful in what you do. But at the same time, there are always going to be areas of your life for improvement. Because when you put your focus into something and grow it really, really well, you also need to take your focus away from other things. And so there was actually a study that came out about 2 years ago on focus, which I put into one of my events only recently. And what they found was that the key to focus isn't knowing what to focus on, it's knowing what not to focus on.
Right.
In the 21st century, focus comes down to deciding what not to do and what not to focus on. In the 1920s and the 1930s, it was what to focus on. So
because
it's sort of
we had less
flip.
distraction, essentially, didn't we? Yeah.
100%. So by getting clear on your values and understanding what you're here to do and why you love doing it and focusing on those things, you're essentially deciding this is what I'm committed to, but all the rest of this stuff has to go on hold. Okay. So I haven't spent a lot of time with my family over the last 10 years. And it's not because I don't love them. It's just because at the moment, based on the life that I love and doing what I love to do, my family took a back seat. I might see them once a month. And sometimes when I'm on tour, I might only see them once every 2 months. But every week I can still spend half an hour on the phone to both my parents and have a chat. And they still feel loved. I still feel like I'm part of the family. There's no disconnect. It's just that's the decision that I had to make. I don't want to spend 8 hours on a Saturday with them. That's not what my purpose is. I'd rather work. But in saying that now I'm starting to get back that time with them. Okay, so it's that decision, those decisions. Now or last year I started,
doesn't it, as well?
Yeah, and like I travel over the last couple of years, I've traveled more than what I ever have. I never even went overseas. I went overseas once to Thailand before the age of 30. After 30, when business started becoming when I started becoming a little bit more successful in business financially, I could go away for a week or two and not have to stress so much about the business. And, this year I was going to take a month off and go to Europe. Now, I could have never done that back earlier. So when people see my Instagram, they go, oh, I would love a month off and it would be great being a millionaire. They didn't see that in between the age of 25 and really probably 30, 35, 30, 34, I was not able to do that. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I just like this.
And I really like your perspective on age as well, because I think as well as needing everything all at the same time, when it comes to, having the perfect family and the perfect career, it comes down to also, I need to have this by a certain age. And I really like that for you, it's an ongoing learning process, and it's not, you don't get to 30 and suddenly your life's downhill. Really, your life's just beginning because you have worked up until that point and you continue to evolve as a human being. And I think so many people in our society believe that once you get to, those milestone birthdays, there's nothing left for you after, or you're perceived a certain way by society. So yeah, I really like the fact that, your values grow with you and you don't stop living your life just because you've reached a certain age, which is something that society really teaches us.
Yeah, and that's because we have to, if like I say this we run leadership events and we run coaching events to teach people how to be better communicators, better leaders, better coaches, and so on. So we run some of those events as well. And something that I say is that, if you're going to listen to others, you have to understand what the results that they've gotten are. And you have to decide whether you want to listen to them. When I worked in the health industry, the majority of people who came in to listen to the doctors, if you look at the doctors, they were in their 50s around that time in the medical center that I worked in. Now, this isn't all doctors, because there are definitely some great doctors out there who have amazing health. But the majority of the doctors that I worked with, they would come into the lunchroom at, like, let's say 1 o'clock on a 2-minute break. They would pop about 20 pills, stuff them in their face, eat some cannolis or whatever, because it was an Italian, like primarily Italian health care center. They would eat some cannolis that, one of the old ladies bought in or whatever. And then they'd grab this coffee that had been sitting there boiling for about 2 hours on the stove. And for any Europeans, they know that there's that like coffee and shit that you boil. And so it was like this gluggy, thick syrup that they would drink, and then they'd go back to work and they would stink. They would smell old and, like old leather, and their skin would look shit. And these people coming in every day to say to the doctors, look, I'm sick. And then the doctors give them health advice. Now, you have to look at that doctor and go, hang on, is this a person that I want to learn about health from? Because essentially that's what they're doing. Just because I've done 4 years of study doesn't mean jack shit. Like, I don't have a university degree and I've been studying for 15 years or so, probably longer. It doesn't mean anything. But the reason why I study is so that I can learn, so I can implement in my own life to better myself. Now, if I can better myself, then hopefully I can inspire others to keep bettering themselves, and I can teach people what I know, not just what I've learned. Like, you can read a book and tell people what to do. In fact, most people do that. My parents do that. My grandparents do it. They give me advice all the time. My grandparents give me financial advice. Now, one side of my family on my mum's side are doing extremely well. Now, they were poor, and my mum grew up poor, and I grew up poor as well. My mum had me at 17. But in saying that, when my grandmother, who's still alive today, she still invests in the share market. Okay, so she's a weapon, and she inspires the shit out of me, because every day she sits down, she listens to the market report. And so I'll go and talk to her about shares. My other grandparents, though, have never really had any money, but they'll tell me what someone said on a current affair or what's happening on the news. Now, the news sensationalizes insignificant shit to get attention, because the news sells marketing. That's what it is. It sells marketing. Now, if you can get as many eyes as you can on the news, it means that the adverts become more expensive. So the news wants to create drama and stuff like that to get more people to watch, because it's more valuable. So my grandmother will give me financial advice, and I sit there and I go, hang on, this person has never had any money, yet she's telling me how to run a multi-million-dollar business. Ain't going to happen. Now, I know her intention is that she wants to help me, but at the same time, she's not helping by giving that advice. Most people in our society give everyone else advice from the shitty results that they've gotten, whether it's overweight people telling other people how to lose weight, whether it's unhealthy people giving health advice, whether it's mentally unhealthy people talking about mental health. Like, this is just, I see it every day across social media. And I understand that the intention is to help, but then the question really becomes, is it really helping? Because are you implementing it, and are you doing what you know how to do? Because if not, you haven't really learned the lessons that you need to learn. Okay, it's just theory. I don't know how I got onto that topic, because there was something that you mentioned there. It was about I think it was about health or health. I started talking about doctors. Sorry.
You started talking. It's interesting that you say that, though, because to your point of, there's a lot of people on Instagram who are spiritual leaders, or whatever their field is, and they promote a certain way of life that they haven't lived. And I think that's what kind of defines you different from other coaches, in that that you've done the hard yards and you haven't led an easy life, and you're not afraid to talk about that. There's a lot of entrepreneurs now that say, look, you just follow my 3-step program and you'll be successful, without, again, going through those hard challenges and processes. That is a part of life. There's no kind of get out of jail free card to get to a certain area of your life. So, I think that's what kind of defines you different from most people, in that you're not afraid to talk about those subjects that, like you said, people don't really want to address and hear about, because it's hard to hear that.
Yeah, and it is, and it does. I have people come to me and they go, Michael, if you weren't so abrupt and upfront, you'd probably make more money, and your events would probably be way bigger, and you'd probably help more people. And I partially agree with that, because if I told people that you could be financially free, most people feel trapped by money. And that's not, they're not trapped because there is such thing as a financial freedom. It's just that most people's idea around what it takes to get money is they're trapped. And so the people who sell financial freedom, because they're selling the solution to people's pain or what they perceive as a solution, a lot of people buy that product. A lot of people buy I saw this years ago. They had, it was like 12-minute abs, and 12-minute abs became a massive seller. It made like millions of dollars, tens, hundreds of millions. Then someone came along and said, well, we'll just do 8-minute abs. And then everyone went and, they got rid of their 12-minute abs and bought 8-minute abs because they thought, well, I can save 4 minutes, but it's 4 minutes. Then someone came along, they went, we can do 3-minute abs. And it's like, it's a lot of society are always looking for the most simple solution because they don't really want to work. And the reason why people don't want to work towards things and put in the time and the effort is because they perceive that they've got to have so much pain in order to achieve something, instead of seeing it as being fulfilling. And it's only fulfilling when it's what you love. So what I try to teach people is if you can get really clear with your values and build a life map, like that's the most important thing first. Now, I try and sell this, we've got an event called Thrive Time, which I think you mentioned earlier. That event there, I found that if you don't develop a life map, you're just hoping that something works in life. And that's how most people live. That's their strategy. In fact, I used to, which is why I built that event. And what it came down to was that, like if you're building a skyscraper, the foundations really need to be very deep in order to go very high. Now, no one walks in front of a skyscraper and you look at it and you go, wow, they're amazing foundations. No one gives a shit about the foundations. They can only just see the high rise and pick it up and go, wow, it looks amazing. So they see the outcome, but they don't see what's below the surface. But you can never, ever build a skyscraper on a shitty, thin foundation because the whole thing falls. What most people do in our society is that they're consistently trying to build the outside because they want everyone else to say, look how successful you are. Look how beautiful you are. Wow, you've got an amazing body. Wow, you're an amazing parent. And so they want everyone else to see the outcome, but they don't really want to lay the foundations. And so what happens is they start building something, they put in all this effort and energy, and then the whole thing falls over and collapses and falls apart. Then they go, shit, I've just wasted 2 or 3 years of my life. So then they're in a rush. Okay, now I've got to rush because I don't want anyone to realize that I've like fucked all this stuff up and it's not working. So they try and cover it up and then they hide it and they rush to build it all back up again. It builds up and then it collapses again. And they do that until they just burn out. And when they're burnt out, they're like, well, I work hard and I don't ever seem to get anywhere. And so a lot of people then start giving up. And that's how we see a lot of people age. They just get more grumpy, more frustrated. And I see this now, like, I bought my first supercar, which was my dream when I was young. I bought my first supercar in my early 30s, and driving that around, a lot of people go, I've heard people, I'm at a cafe eating lunch with my friends and people walk past and they go, oh, it's probably a drug dealer. Because in their head, they can only justify the only way that someone can make that much money is because they've got to be doing something illegal, because I work hard and I'm not getting anywhere. So therefore they must be doing something illegal. And so many people justify why they don't have the results that they want. And they'll create these bullshit scenarios of, like if you're attractive, it's probably because you're brain dead and you're not that smart and not that intelligent. Or, if you've got a 6-pack, it's because you're arrogant and you're ignorant and you probably don't give a shit about. And so a lot of people in our society get to a point where they've worked so hard and they're so burnt out and they're so frustrated because they keep building, trying to prove themselves to everybody else in society, and it keeps falling apart. And eventually they just go, well, fuck it, it's just too hard. And then after that, they just blame, complain, justify, and give reasons why they don't have the results that they want. And that's how they live. And that's the rest of their life. That's as good as life's ever going to get.
Research actually demonstrates that the more we seek external validation, the less likely we are to carry through with the thing that we said we were going to do. So, oftentimes it's better to, work silently, work in silence and build upon that without seeking all of that. I think the issue in our society nowadays is where we have all of these external kind of factors that are influencing us, and that comes back to the internet and TV and, as you said, advertising. And so it's about shutting out all of that noise essentially so that you can build upon your values, so that you can lead that high value lifestyle that you talk about. But yeah, I completely agree with that.
I think most things in life are almost a double-edged sword. And, if we can use pain as a motivator to do something great, or we can use pain as a motivator to give up. We can use judgment as the reason to achieve, and we can use judgment for the reason to give up. It just depends how you want to use that tool. I know for me, being a kid who was kicked out of school at 15, and, I went back to school and finished off grade 12, but I wasn't good at school. I was put into special classes, told that I had, the word dyslexia was thrown around, learning difficulties. I was put into special classes, all of those sort of things. And for me, I just got to a point and I was like, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm going to get somewhere and I'm somebody. And I just worked my ass off. And so at first, the pain and the judgment became my driver. But after a while, what I noticed, and this is where I also get a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of extremely successful people, is they work hard trying to prove themselves, but it only gets you so far. And then you start to hit a glass ceiling. You can't break through it, because there comes a point in your life where you have to realize that all of that forced you to do what you love. And it forced you to break the mold of everything else, and to break away and to be an individual. And once you start to get clear with what that individual is and what it looks like, that's probably your highest values. So it's nature doing its own work. Once you get to that level, once you build your own life map and you develop those good foundations, then you know that you're on the right path and you know that you're doing the right thing. Then after that, there's like, you're in space after that. You've broken through the stratosphere. You can go to whatever level you want because you know who you are as a person, and there's no limits to that. There's always a limit to dealing with judgment and criticism, because after a while, criticism and judgment doesn't have the same pain as what it used to have. Okay, I used to do a lot of boxing and kickboxing. Like when you first start, everything hurts, and it hurts for a long, long time. But after a while, you can take a really powerful kick and it doesn't hurt it hurts, but not like it used to hurt, where you want to give up and where you want to stop and where you want to fall in a ball and where you don't want to do it anymore. After a while, you're like, what, I did something really cool because I know it hurts for the better. That judgment, it almost turns into that once you break through that stratosphere. So I think that judgment and criticism and all of those things serve a purpose at different points of life. But it still comes down to the point that if you don't build out your own life map and you don't know who you are as a person and what you're trying to achieve in life, and you don't have clarity on that, and you don't know how to keep clarifying it as you grow, because as you grow, it gets clearer. But at first, it can be a little bit hazy and a little bit, frustrating to try and figure it out. Once you get clear with that stuff, then, you just do what you're here to do. Like I get told every week what I should do in my business. Clients, staff, customers, just people in general, people on Facebook. But at the end of the day, it's my business, and I wake up and I do what I love, and I'm the one who puts in the hours. So therefore I'm going to do it my way. And that's my way. And I've shown that, I learn from other people and I'm open to that. But at the same time, the people that I take advice from are those who understand me and what I'm trying to achieve. I don't take advice from those who just randomly throw out advice because they think that it's the right thing to do, when in fact, it's just them expressing an opinion, and everyone's got a fucking opinion. So who cares? Okay.
I love that.
I think that it's important after a while that we, as individuals who are responsible and we're adults, to start filtering the information that we take in, whether it's from the TV, whether it's from the news, and we critically analyze where that information is coming from. Like, just because a person has doctor at the front of their name doesn't mean shit, really. It just means that they've studied a field for a specific period of time. That doesn't mean that they're good. It just means that they passed. After that, then it becomes, do they love what they do? I mean, I've met some incredible doctors and they are driven. They just study because they're inquisitive. And I've met doctors who are stale and couldn't give a shit. They're just there to pay. In fact, a lot of people that I meet don't want to work in the jobs that they've got. They didn't know what they wanted to do. They left school. They went to university. They studied a degree. They got a degree. It paid good money. They bought a house. Then they bought a bigger house. Then they got married. Then they had kids. Now they send their kids to private college. Now they're trying to keep up with everyone else, and they're not really doing what they want to do, but they've got to make $200,000 or $250,000 a year to pay for their life. Now, what are you going to do?
Of course, that comes back to going through life with goals as opposed to your fundamental values, doesn't it? Yeah. Michael, thank you so much. You have been a wealth of information. I know you're a busy man, so, I'm so grateful for you to come onto this platform and have this conversation, because I think it is important. And there's so many people and there's so much noise all talking about different kinds of movements. It's really refreshing to sit down with someone that has put in the hard work and realizes that there's no magic step towards success. So I just really want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story with me. And I don't want to take up any more of your day. I'm sure you've got a lot to do, but just thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And I have to say, I really appreciate the time and obviously the effort that you put in as well, because you asked some really great questions, which, allowed me to hopefully, I just hope that if I can inspire one person to just think a little bit differently, that's, then I've done my job. And so, without people like yourself who have platforms like this, that inspiration might not be able to be shared. So, I just hope that one person out there thinks about life a little bit differently. So I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the great questions.